Good morning. It's March 20th, 2020. And just starting out, I want to note I see going to the Met Opera site that the entire season, or the rest of the season for Met Opera, has been canceled, which we kind of expected. They also announced the second week of operas. See if I have the right tab. No, that's the cancellation. Here's the second week. It's Wagner week. Okay. I may not follow in Wagner week. I hope week 3 is a little more upbeat. And some of these are very, very long. Anyway, I will talk about Wagner another time because I would rather talk about something more happy. And that's La Fille du Regiment, the daughter of the regiment. Just do the quick synopsis. So here's the synopsis at the Met website. That was the most recent production, I believe. Actually, I'm not sure who's in that one. In any case, this is a comic opera. So we will come back to this. This is of the operas we've seen so far. What we got? Carmen, she's stabbed to death. We've got La Bohème, dies of tuberculosis. We've got Il Trovatore, a bunch of people die. Okay, we're just, babies burnt, blah. Okay, that's not exactly uplifting. And La Traviata, yet another death due to tuberculosis. Okay. I hope for week 3, it's all comedies. But there is a reason that those first 4 operas were tragedies, and we're not, maybe actually we'll get a Mozart week. Actually, that'd be awesome. They gotta, if they're doing Wagner week, they've got to do a Mozart week. It's only fair. Okay. And I hope they do, because I will be there every night. I love Mozart. He's my tops. Okay, so it's comic. It's in French. So again, let's note we have 5 operas so far. 3 have been in Italian, 2 were by Verdi. And this one is French, and it's by Donizetti. So I want you to note, you can't say the reason that we have 3 in Italian and 2 in French is because that, Verdi's Italian and Puccini's Italian, so of course they write in Italian. That's partly true, but Verdi also wrote French operas, though I believe in almost all of his best operas that he originally wrote in French, for a French libretto, I should say, he reworked it to an Italian libretto. And it's not as simple as just translating, which of course is not trivial in and of itself. Okay, let me do the synopsis, then I'll get back to the issue about comedy in the language of the operas. So we have, this is kind of like set during the Napoleonic Wars. I believe, so what we have is we're up in the mountains. It's in a mountain pass. And we have a French regiment that's up there. Some aristocratic party wants to get through, yada, yada. And there's a whole bunch of situations because there is essentially this teenage girl, maybe 18 or 19 years old, supposedly, who is La Fille du Regiment, which is daughter of the regiment. They found her as a baby. This regiment found her as a baby. And she has grown up. So this gives you an idea of the Napoleonic Wars because they went on for a long time, that you had this one regiment that's been able to stay together, bringing up this baby girl. Now, she does all sorts of things with the regiment. She's their mascot. She, salutes them and sings regimental songs and this, that, and the other. Well, she has fallen in love with the local who's on the other side of the wars, or at least his people are, and he's a Tyrolean. If I understand correctly, and I've watched a couple of productions of this, basically he's supposed to be a country bumpkin. He's a hillbilly. This is up in the mountains, Tyrolean. I think he shows up in Lederhosen even. In any case, Maria and Tony, anyway, fall in love. But they're like, no, you can't because he's on the other side of the war. And at the end of Act 1, and this is a 2-act opera, Tonio joins the regiment because he wants to marry Marie. And they say, and Marie says, I can only marry a man who's part of the regiment because, this is my family. These are my people. At the end of Act 2, Tonio sings a song. So this is the tenor aria, Amis and Me. And I'm going to just flip over to this. And I got to the end. I'm going to link to, I'm not playing this right now. I don't need any copyright hassle. This is officially from the Metropolitan Opera. This is not the production we're going to be seeing. This one is from 2019. And this is Javier Camarena. And when I link to it, it's not the first time he went through that aria. You see, he's in a salute. At the very beginning of this, he was in that salute because he had just finished the aria. And he did an encore. Now, that used to be much more common. There's certain opera practices that we rarely see today for a variety of reasons. Things change. One of the things that I miss is what's called a curtain call, which is at the end of the act. All of the singers who featured in that act come out and they bow. And sometimes it's done by scene, but usually it's done by act when they do curtain calls, and that's kind of really old school. Another one is doing encores, and you almost never get an encore in live opera anymore. Now, I'm pretty sure this one was planned because before this performance, I just remember last year, because this is from 2019, it's from last year, it was semi-hyped, just his very clear notes. And you might be asking, why was it encored? It's because there are 9 high Cs in this. And being able to hit them with the purity and no voice cracking, and it's beautiful because this is a bel canto opera. This is from 1840, which means there's all sorts of vocal acrobatics from the tenor and, of course, the soprano. So actually 8 high Cs are written into the aria, and most tenors will attempt the 9th if they're a bel canto singer, and they can do that bel canto, beautiful music, but it's also that coloratura and that vocal fireworks. Verdi and others squashed that. They were later in the 19th century. This one is from 1840. Okay, anyway, that's Act 1. Act 2 has, I didn't mention that, and I need to remember the name because I always have trouble, Marquise of Berkenfield. Yes, she was abandoned as a baby, and guess what? Oh, goodness, this is the daughter of my brother or something like that. We'll find out this is a lie. Anyway, I'm going to bring her home and finish her and get her a suitably aristocratic marriage. Now, part of the humor, of course, is Marie is a tomboy, and she does not want to wear the frilly dresses and do all that aristocratic crap. So the Marquise, I want to mention some of the characters here. There's the Duchess of Krakenthorpe, who is the aunt of the man that they set Marie up to marry. And the Duchess of Krakenthorpe is a spoken part, if I remember correctly, and is often a comic actress or even actor who doesn't necessarily sing. My understanding, I will have to go look this up, is that Ruth Bader Ginsburg has played the Duchess of Krakenthorpe. And if you didn't know this about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she's a big opera fan. And Antonin Scalia had been a big opera fan too. And they used to go to operas together in D.C. And they were friends over opera, even if they didn't agree on on constitutional theory and stuff like that. They both loved opera together. And someone actually wrote, I think, a one-act opera of Scalia and Ginsburg. I've never seen it, so but that was also, I believe, after Scalia had died, too. Anyway, Duchess of Krakenthorpe is often a non-opera person. This is also like some of the characters that show up in Die Fledermaus, which is another comic opera. And hopefully we'll get that, too. That's a fun one, especially since it can be in English. In any case, I'm not going through all the details, and this is one of the problems with comic opera. You thought Il Trovatore had a bunch of plot interweavings. comic operas tend not to be terribly straightforward. It's just like a sitcom where you have multiple plot lines perhaps that go. In any case, you know it's going to end happily. It's a comic opera. Marie and Tony are going to get married. The regiment's going to show up to rescue Marie and all of that, and it's all very funny. You need to have people who have good timing with regards to the some of the aspects, and we will see. So this is opera comique. They have non-sung parts. Things are spoken at various points, and it will be in French. If I've seen this particular, this is the one from this week. I've actually seen the recording before. Nathalie Dessay plays Marie, and there's some other more recent ones. So let me talk about, why French or why specific languages in opera and why comedy. I'll just get the comedy one out of the way. Part of it is it's just difficult to do. There's not as many comedic operas in the repertoire of grand opera. There are some chamber operas and other things like that. So that's, for small spaces that are comedic. And then there's some stuff like Don Giovanni is not, it's called an opera buffa. That does not mean it's funny. An opera comique is not necessarily funny either. The problem is comedy is difficult. It's whoever said, dying is easy, comedy is hard. That's true. And part of it is so much of comedy is contextual, is definitely situated in a specific culture, and it's of the moment. I have tried reading Aristophanes comedies, and you need so many footnotes to understand the jokes. A lot of them are political jokes. You're not going to understand political jokes from 200 years later. In Die Fledermaus, which is full of jokes at various points, it's a point people make of updating the jokes for right now, and that's just a performance tradition, and they do it. That's like the Mikado. There's a song called I've Got a Little List. They always change, well, they don't always, but if you have a good writer, certain productions always update the lyrics so it's political jokes and cultural jokes for right now so you can get the joke. Because nothing's worse than having to explain a joke. So most of the comedy that you get are from the situation. So this is the case where you've got an abandoned baby. She actually had been from an aristocratic family, but she's grown up in the army. She's a tomboy. She's pro-army, yada, yada. And that's where a lot of the humor comes from. And then you've got the country bumpkin, etc. So a lot of the humor is coming from the aristocrats versus the army versus country bumpkin kind of stuff. So it's pretty broad humor. It's the situation. So that's first off. The other thing is you need to have singers who are good actors for it to actually be funny. Now, the Met can actually get singers who are good for opera. This isn't Broadway, and Broadway is acting is different too, versus stage play acting versus TV acting versus movie acting. Okay, and I've seen Nathan Fillion discuss soap opera acting versus some of the other acting he's done, and it's very funny when he demonstrates it. But you still need to have some acting ability, and some of the great singers of the past could not act. Pavarotti really couldn't act. It's some of the funniest things I've seen, but a gorgeous voice. He had been in comic operas, by the way, but most of the time it's where you're not really requiring much subtlety from the tenor to act. So that's comedy. And I do love comedic opera, and I loved La Traviata. It's gorgeous music. The production last night was a gorgeous new production in 2018. Beautiful costumes. The makeup was done very well so that you could believe Violetta was wasting away, even though the singer obviously wasn't. It was very well put over, gorgeous music. But, and this is why Mozart is my favorite, is he gives you the gorgeous music and the comedy. So, yay, Mozart. Okay, so why Italian and French specifically? And Donizetti is not French. But he wrote in French, and a lot of them did. Why not English? Why not German? Well, there is German, so we're going to get Wagner Week with German, but he wasn't the only German language composer. And Mozart, he did a couple of German, they weren't called operas, they were Singspiels. There's like Broadway musicals, but when Mozart does it, it's at a much higher level. Die Zauberflöte was in German, but we usually, not usually, sometimes in Die Fledermaus too, a lot of the German comic operas get translated into English because English and German are similar in sounds, and that's what it's about. How does it sound when it's sung? And I came up with an example. Here we go. Gelato, gelato, versus ice cream. That's not pretty. So we have too many sibilants, a lot of consonant sounds at the end of words. Italian just has that perfect balance, and here's a different, and I'm going to do a different contrast between Italian and French. So Italian, that's amore, amore, and then you've got French and Carmen, l'amour. Yeah, I'm exaggerating, and that's not how you sing it. But the problem with French is it's very vowel heavy. And some of the consonants they do have, like the way they do their R's and the nasal N's and that kind of thing, it's like it's in the back of your throat or in your nose. It doesn't sound good. Now, of course, this is my point, is that the sung version of the languages don't necessarily sound a lot like the spoken, except when it's Italian, because Italian has some good, strong consonants balanced with vowels. You don't have all these consonant clusters like you get in English and German. You get these consonant collisions, but it's not overburdened with, what happened to him? This is from an old Steve Martin routine. He spoke French. That you're just drowning in all of the phlegm from the back of your throat because you have so many vowels. You need to have some consonants to hold up the line, and you need some beautiful round vowels to sing. Oh, so Italian opera is very beautiful. There used to be a lot more English opera pre-Mozart, so pre-classical era, called the Baroque period, and there was a lot of Baroque opera. There's one I like that is based on the Aeneid, Aeneas and Dido, and it's in English. And then there's, of course, plenty of 20th and then into 21st century English language opera, but it sounds so different, obviously, from a Verdi opera or Mozart doing Italian opera. That said, a lot of this, it was originally in the Paris Opera Comique, which had a particular performance tradition, and it's comic, and there's plenty of French operas in the repertoire, and there's Russian and German, but of course Italian dominates. It's gorgeous music, and what can I say? And the language and the music pair very well in a way that none of the other languages really do all that well. Anyway, hope to see you tonight.